Welcome to So What's It Actually About? I'm your host, Margie McKechnie, and I, along with my wide array of guests, hope to help you better understand and weather the wonderful world of actuarial science. Hello and welcome to today's episode. I am joined by Eugene, who is a tutor at UCT, but also is undertaking his master's in actuarial science. So thank you for being with us.
Oh, thank you for having me.
So please tell me, standard question, outline your sort of background, your academic background, and why actuarial science.
So with my academic background, I actually came to UCT registered under BCom accounting.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Because that's something my sister had actually done. So I was really good at accounting, like in high school, like really, really good.
Okay.
And like I was good at maths, but wasn't like super stellar. But I could see myself like becoming a chartered accountant like in the future.
Okay.
So I ended up coming to UCT, and then we had our little orientation thing, and then I think it was Alison who said that, oh, you guys can like pick and change like courses. You know?
Yes.
So
yes.
you can, like,
she's like head of, where is she in the faculty?
Yeah.
I'm seeing it. There we go. Okay.
So she was like, okay, you guys can change certain parts of like your curriculum. And so everyone does maths in commerce. So the accounting kids do like MAM 1010.
Okay.
And then I was like, okay, maybe I could do MAM 1000, because like at the beginning she said
it didn't make a difference, really.
yeah, it doesn't make a difference, first of all. And she was like, MAM 1000 is the hardest maths course ever. And then I was
like, suck up a pain.
Yeah. I was like, okay, let me maybe try the quote unquote hardest maths course ever. And then so I just added that to my curriculum. And then like when I was actually doing like accounting in first year, I sort of felt like demoralized, I want to say, a little bit, because the accounting at uni is way different from the accounting at school.
Yes, I've heard.
So like the first week we got to uni, they were like, oh, forget everything you learned in high school. And I was
like, it's lovely when you get that.
Yeah, it just felt like, and then they taught accounting from scratch. And since they have a prior and non-prior class, so you could learn accounting and you could do accounting in, at university, at UCT, without ever actually doing it in high school at all.
I thought it was like a prerequisite.
Yeah, so
to go into the accounting stream.
Yeah, it is a prerequisite to go to the accounting stream, but to take the actual course,
okay,
and actually understand the actual course, you didn't have to do it in high school.
Okay, yeah.
And then
I didn't do accounting in high school, and we obviously have to do accounting first year. So I was one of those unlucky players.
Yeah. So like the non-priors, there were like a lot of, so it was split into like priors and non-priors, and there were like a lot of non-priors that were actually doing way better than the priors that actually had like a
because they didn't have that preconceived idea of what it should be.
Exactly. And now it just seemed to me like, wow, like it I don't know, it just seemed a bit like wrong to me the way it was being taught. It just seemed like the spark for accounting was gone. And in the math section, like when I was doing MAM 1000, it seemed a little bit like easy to me, like at the beginning and so on and so forth. But like the first test is like the decant test. So if you get less than like 50%, you won't be forced to decant, but you'll be asked to, advised to decant. So then like after test one, like I got my test one marks back, and then I had 49% for that test. And I was like, wow, this is absolutely insane, because I'd never gotten like that low in my life.
Yeah, I'm talking about university, was a humbling experience.
Yeah. So it's sort of like, it was like, wow, it felt like the biggest thing in the world for me.
At the time.
At the time.
Yeah.
And then I was like, I spoke to a couple of people, and they were like, oh, don't worry about it. Like, it gets better. And then, so I was more so like enthusiastic about maths and so on and so forth, like trying to learn it from like a physics point of view, how do physicists use it, like watching YouTube videos, that sort of thing. Mm-hmm. And then my mark, like in my second test, I think I got like 70% or something.
Excellent.
And then like in in my third test, I think I got 99%.
Good.
And then that's when I was like, so
Maybe I'm good at this.
yeah. So I was like, hey, maybe like I could, because like from what I heard in actuarial science, it was about like maths, and I like
standard, right?
Yeah, the standard, it's about maths, and I really liked maths. So then I did. So I was like, hey, I like the maths, so I switched the stats course that that I do from stats 1000 to stats 1006. And then again, I was really bad at stats like at the beginning, because the stats from high school versus the stats from university is like completely night and day.
Yeah.
And like there are some students who had a like a strong background because they did AP stats.
Yeah.
Then I was like, all confused and stuff. But either way, I managed to like get through that. It was like the same story with it being like, easy and so on. And yeah. And then I got into like second year, and since then it's been like a nice, a straight and narrow line. It's just that in second year, like again, the maths like made sense, but at some point the maths was getting like too abstract.
Yeah, I also found that.
It wasn't like grounded in reality, because when I like learn concepts, I try to relate them as much as possible to real life. So like if I'm trying to learn accounting, like I'll try to research, go on YouTube, watch like videos and see, okay, accountants do this, easy for the sisters, and our maths like derivatives, integration, what's the history of that?
Yes.
Why was that used? And so the maths sort of like when you get into like super complex stuff like category theory and group theory, it sort of sounds like maths for the sake of mathematics. So it's starting off
like it's creating order, but you're not sure what that order is necessarily for outside of theory.
Yes, exactly. So there isn't like a real world grounding for it. So at that point, I wanted to like keep pursuing maths, but then I was like, there is nothing for me to latch on to like in reality.
Yeah.
So I sort of like just dumped that and continued with the whole like actuarial.
Which is by definition right?
Yes,
so I guess that was something that became increasingly more interesting.
Yes.
As you started doing subjects that were more specific to actuarial science and to the jobs of an actuary.
Yeah.
Okay. And then tell me, when you got towards the end, right? So honestly, you did your fourth year here, which was, did you do BBA Sci?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. So you did your 4 years, and then you were doing honestly your different subjects, which were your like ARM, etc. Fourth year.
Yes.
And then you decided to do your F100s, which is sort of heading towards the end point.
Yes.
What F100s did you decide to do?
So I did F105, which is the finance and investments, and F106, which is the enterprise risk management.
Okay, which is CERA.
Yeah,
right?
CERA.
Okay, perfect. So can we talk to both of those?
Right.
So let's go down the investments route firstly. Could you maybe talk to what in that syllabus? And also like what do actuaries do in investments? I think it's one of those things that people think, like do your CFA if you want to work in investments. But like what is the role of an actuary in the investment space?
So in the investment space, so in terms of the actual curriculum, it's just your standard, these are your derivatives, these are your financial instruments, these are your indexes, these are potential rules and regulations that could pertain to governing all of those financial instruments.
Okay.
And then these are your taxes, these are your liabilities, etc., etc. So that, and then there's also the actual like risk management and the actual pricing of that. So how this might actually be different to the whole quant space, because I do have quite a few friends who went straight to the quant route, is that actuaries have an emphasis on the actual like liabilities, right? So whenever people are like to me like, oh wow, you did this finance and whatever, like my friends who did comp sci and whatever, and they're like, oh, what stocks should I invest in, and so on and so forth. And I sort of like tried to explain that that's not like precisely what I would, what I would do, because like to first like invest in something, you can't just purely like invest in it like blanketed.
Yeah.
You first need to look at your own liabilities and what you actually owe and how your actual assets affect your liabilities. And
there's more holistic to you, basically saying, I need to be more responsible because there's two sides to this.
Yes,
This is, the accounting side of you is the accounting.
Yeah.
Like for every debit there's a credit.
Exactly.
So I think that's very interesting that you talk about that, because I think when people think about investments, they just think assets, right?
Yes.
Whereas like that whole aspect of asset liability matching with ARM is so important to say. It's all wonderful if you're getting a fantastic return on your assets, but then if they're not liquid and you need to now pay a liability, what are you going to do, kind of thing?
Yeah.
You're going to cash them out at suboptimal rates to make sure you can meet your liability.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
It's so continue speaking to that. Sorry, I interrupted you.
It's sort of that that balance that like we have to keep. And there's like the term like liabilities can range like from any future payments that you have to make. So if you're a personal individual, like if you have any dependents, let's say like any future school fees that they might need to pay, even though that doesn't seem like a liability,
an outflow.
Yeah, it is an outflow that's going to happen in the future. So by definition, it's a liability. So that sort of separates us from quants, because we have a better understanding of liabilities, and we can actually choose assets that, match that, in terms of like liabilities. And then we also, I guess we could have a little bit of a better understanding of like our actual, I want to say, like risk management. So like the actual like modeling component, I'm more and more realizing and learning that like quite a few actuaries, like they don't sit behind the desk and like do the actual like core modeling, even though we did learn how to do that, like never actually, go on to do that. So that is something that we could do, but like we don't do it as much, but
because we often I think it depends. I mean, I guess if you wanted to be that, you could invest in that space, but often you were the one interpreting the output. Right, and saying, okay, based on this money, this is the decision we should make. And one thing I just want to touch on again is with risk management when it comes to investments. So I mean, you've obviously spoken about investing given your liability, but you also spoke to like derivatives and that sort of thing. And I guess just to position that for the audience, like you want to invest in assets that match your liabilities, but that's not always possible, right? And derivatives and these various sort of hedging techniques are there to help you reduce that risk, to help you match your assets and liabilities better, and also maybe unpack the concept of a risk appetite, because I think that's also really important in investments, right? Because I know I'm very risk averse, and I'm very risk averse. But you may not be. So maybe unpack that, and also how that impacts how you invest, especially as a individual.
Right. So an individual organization's risk appetite is essentially the amount of risk that they are willing to take in order to achieve like their goals. So in terms of finance, it's the amount of risk that they're willing to take in order to achieve their desired return, right? So your risk appetite can be measured by like in a myriad of ways. So in like massive organizations, in terms of like finance, the actual chief risk officer or somebody who's like the head of risk will come up with the sort of like they'll sort of describe the risks within the organization. They'll speak to a whole host of people within the organizations, like the shareholders, the board of directors, to see what their appetite for risk is, like which is how much risk they can take on. And then once they gather all of that information about the risk appetite, they create their risk budget. And the risk budget is essentially, it's similar to like a risk appetite, but like in a nutshell, it's just like a budget for money. This one is like a budget